Good morning to you, Renee Cummings. How are you? It's been a while.
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning, my
morning.
dear.
Yes, yes, yes.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Jet setter you are.
Gosh, I'm very tired.
She is
We
a jet
appreciate you
setter.
jumping on planes and being here this morning. I know how it is. And then you probably had late classes yesterday and presentation.
I actually returned home at 11 p.m. last night
Oh my God. So thank you for
from
being here
upstate
this
New
morning,
York.
really.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's great to see you. Let me
Oh,
wait. I have to introduce you properly. I went and do some homework this morning, so
oh my word, word. No, let me
I
go
don't
back
want
into
to
it.
I want people to know why we have you on. All right. So our guest is Professor Renee Cummings, a 2023 VentureBeat AI Innovator Award winner, is an artificial intelligence data and tech ethicist, the first data activist in residence at the University of Virginia School of Data Science, where she was named Professor in Practice in Data Science. She also served as co-director of the Public Interest Technology University Network at UVA. She's also a non-resident senior fellow at the Brookings Institute and the inaugural senior fellow AI Data and Public Policy at All Tech is Human, a leading think tank. She's a distinguished member of the World Economic Forum on Data Equity Council and the World Economic Forum's AI Governance Alliance and Advisory Council member with the AI and Equality Initiative at Carnegie Council of Ethics in International Affairs and a member of the Global Academic Network at the Center for AI and Digital Policy. Professor Cummings is also a criminologist, criminal psychologist, therapeutic jurisprudence specialist, and a community scholar at Columbia University. And that is only one quarter of the bio. And she's my friend. I'm very proud
Yes,
of you.
we saw the hugger picture.
Good morning, Rennie. First of all, let's say how really impressed and proud we have the work you're doing and your
Indeed.
inroads as the top 100 of this field. And the presentation at the parliament that you gave on, is it on Monday?
On Monday, yeah?
On Monday was so impressive in terms of getting parliamentarians to understand where their heads should be in terms of data management, their own digital DNA, and how they can leverage the potential for opportunities, but also protect themselves from the challenges and the vulnerabilities that exist. So I thought it would be great for our audience to get a sense of this for themselves because it was so eye-opening to parliamentarians who, in many cases, didn't have a clue what's coming, what's here, sorry, and what they should be preparing for. So give us a sense of what you're doing in this field so that people get some context, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, of course, for having me and inviting me into the conversation. So at the moment, I'm considered a critical data scientist. And what I'm doing is looking at the ways in which data and, of course, artificial intelligence are having an extraordinary impact on society. We're seeing data and AI being used in very significant ways to advance society at speed and at a scale that we could not have ever imagined because of some computer science and statistical processes and data science processes such as deep learning and machine learning and unsupervised learning that's really taking data into a direction that is unimaginable. But where there are great rewards, there are great risks because many societies, many countries, many communities were not really prepared for the advent of artificial intelligence as it has come in this incarnation. So what we're seeing is data abuse, processes, every process, every solution, every system. But then we're also seeing that data could be not only monetized, but also weaponized against us. So I work in artificial intelligence and I work in data science and still working at the intersection of national security, criminal justice, defense, and data, and of course, AI.
Why should this topic be important to the average citizen? I understand legislators, but do you think, and do you think the public understands where we are actually now in terms of how their data is being amassed and used by giant corporations?
Frozen.
It goes to the
Yeah.
machine.
Okay, there you are.
Did you get that, Renee? Renee, did you get that question?
Yes. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you now. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So I think most people are not really as au courant as they need to be when it comes to understanding how their data is being used. So every day, we create data points. Everything human has now been turned into a data point. So if it is we're using a social media platform and we've shared something, we've liked something, we've disliked something, we've added a comment to something, we've posted photographs of our food, spatial computing data of where we were, we've tagged the venue where we had a great time, if we were at a restaurant, everything is a data point. And those data points are being compiled to create a data profile, which is your digital profile. Now, there's something called data brokers. And data brokers scrape the internet. They operate almost like cartels. They scrape the internet for all this data. And then they package and they repackage that data. They sell your data to the highest bidder, to companies that are looking for a particular kind of data. And then that data is further monetized. The average person using social media is using it for fun, using it for entertainment, using it to stay connected to family members and friends, but not understanding that that data is now being used by big tech companies to create all different types of solutions that are now being monetized. They also don't understand, or many of us don't understand, that we have digital rights. And now with artificial intelligence, we are seeing data being used in ways, informed decision making. And many of those hard fought rights that we have as individuals in a society. So civil rights and, of course, human rights now being impacted just by something called an algorithm. And an algorithm, in its simplest form, like I explained to people, is that we all use algorithms. When we go onto Google and we say, what are the best restaurants? What are the best plays? Or what are the things that the top 10 trends in fashion? What are the top shoes? Those are recommendation algorithms. When you use Netflix, and Netflix is not only looking at the movies that you watch, they are looking at the movies that you watch, the times you watch those movies, how long you stay on a particular movie, how long it takes for your attention to move to another movie. All of that disaggregated data comes together to create these profiles. So it's very important, particularly as all nations are moving swiftly to deploy national AI strategies and national data strategies, looking at safety, security, and privacy issues when it comes to anyone who lives within those borders, and how people's data are being protected, how it's not being protected, what sort of infringements could be made on that data. Just lots and lots of conversations around AI and data that we all need to be in at this moment.
Renee, a lot of times, and you're right, a lot of times people may know on a peripheral kind of level or a simple level in the back of the mind that my data is important and that I am being monitored on some level by the searches I make or by what I shop on Amazon with or wherever am inputting information. They kind of know it, but we don't take it on seriously. In other words, the convenience of whatever I am pursuing, whatever that search is, or whatever that shopping for that item is of more value and more importance to me at that second than knowing, well, Google is watching what I'm doing. So how do you redirect people if it is that you think they should be redirected, or how much should they really be focused on those simple tasks?
And that's excellent, because it's really the convenience that the developers and the tech companies know that we go for. So they know that we want to download an app. So we will click, I agree, I agree, I agree, I agree to the end without even reading the content. But we also
Guilty,
know, and research has
guilty.
shown, we all are guilty, but research has shown it is impossible to humanly read all of that content in a short space of time. There's been research done with people actually reading the content that they give us on the phone. And it took people actually 3 months to read all of that. So it's really, as you would appreciate, designed by corporate lawyers who are there to protect the corporate interests of the tech companies and not the consumers or the users of the technology. Why data has become more important now is really because of artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is now so pervasive and part of all our lives that we really don't understand sometimes an algorithm is making a decision about us. What we're seeing now in particular sectors like criminal justice, healthcare, uh, finance, mortgages, housing, particularly internationally, that algorithms are being used by big companies to decide who gets a loan, who doesn't get a loan, who gets a criminal sentence, who doesn't get a sentence, who gets a long, harsh sentence, who gets a short sentence. Things like insurance, your premium, all of these things are being decided by algorithms. And these algorithms are scraping the internet. So some people don't know if you have an Instagram page and you are an avid, let's say, extreme sports fan and participant, and you are posting photographs of yourself, at the edge of cliffs or treacherous streams or on treacherous bridges because those are things that you like. Now insurance companies have algorithms out there searching that are pulling this information and saying, okay, this individual now is high risk. That is something that never happened in the past. Or an algorithm that decides what kind of sentence you get. So because of the use of algorithms and how powerful these algorithms are in really actually creating access or denying access or creating opportunities or denying opportunities, more and more in particular, you've seen the EU with their EU AI Act saying, these are the protections that need to be put in place. These are the kinds of risks with data that we are not going to take a chance with. This is the way in which companies need to behave. These are the compliance. These are the legislations in place. And this is just the way we need to proceed with AI because since the advent of the printing press, there is no technology as powerful as AI is at the moment. So it really means that all countries need to have national AI strategies. Most countries have and have deployed those. And just conversations with any population about data, about the power of data, about how we use data for progress, and of course, advancing things like sustainable development goals. Data is also very vulnerable to attack, to bad actors, to just many kinds of challenges that countries and citizens and communities cannot take those kinds of risks moving forward. Because we are talking now about countries that are data poor, countries that are data rich, countries that have digital identities, countries that are digitally invisible. And it is really a critical aspect of progress and a critical aspect of the future that any country, any community, any citizen needs to be on top of their data, how it's being used, and how it can be used in very positive ways. And of course, the things that we need to do to mitigate any kinds of risks around the ways in which our data is being manipulated.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned risk because one of the pervasive conversations, as you mentioned on Monday, in the world where global leaders are concerned, the UK is on the verge of an election, the US is on the verge of an election, Trinidad and Tobago is on the verge of an election, and the political spectre has in the past been, what's the word, intercepted by bots, AI, and micro targeting, etc. And those first world countries understand the critical importance of protecting the democratic process from infiltration, and I mean in a sinister way, by AI. How much of that should we be looking at? Because I read an article recently about the UK government and what they're focusing on for their upcoming election and how they are seeking legislatively to protect their electoral process. What should we be looking at in Trinidad and Tobago in terms of protecting those kinds of processes?
Most definitely. And that is such a critical question because data and democracy have such an intricate, an intimate relationship. People need data to make informed decisions. So you have situations where the political process and the voting process could actually be enhanced by AI when it comes to using the technology, let's say like a large language model or even a chatbot for individuals to engage with politicians and legislators in new kind of ways where information could be shared. There could be a lot of education, a lot of awareness, a lot of information around, voters' rights, what those rights are, the things that you're looking for. It's also a great way for community members and constituents to put our politicians to the task. Because if they say one thing, we can fact check them very easily using data. We can present data from different demographics, from different jurisdictions to really make them become better. And that's the good part of AI and algorithms and data. But the risky part is the micro targeting. The risky part is the media manipulation. The risky part is the disinformation that spreads at the speed and the spread extraordinary. Deep fakes, creating a lot of challenges, particularly internationally, where people are cloning people's voices, cloning people's images, putting these videos together and making it look like a particular representative or legislator or politician has said something that they've not said, and deploying that among their constituents or their followers or their tribe, and of course creating a lot of havoc. Also not deploying it in the country. There have been cases where deep fakes have been created and they've been deployed, let's say in the US, a deep fake of a president saying something against a particular community, but not deployed in the US, but now deployed in an African country where there where there's the roots of the community that is being sort of discriminated against in the in the video. So let's say something sent to Trinidad and Tobago saying that a particular president does not want Trinidad and Tobago nationals ever entering the United States, and something like that spreading in Trinidad and Tobago. You would find that Trinis would be calling other Trinis in the US and saying, but I saw this, so I heard this, and just that level of disinformation. So what we see now is the EU, of course, coming together with their own protocols as it comes to the use of AI in elections. The UK, the United States, well, we are in total protocol, a mood right now. Lots of the conversations that we're having, even tomorrow, I'm having one with the Congressional Black Caucus around many of these issues. So it's how do we use this technology positively? How do we understand the risks of distrust, deception, disinformation, deep fakes, the lack of equity in decision making, the lack of the requisite level of information that you need. So these are conversations that also need to be ventilated publicly. So for people to understand, these are some of the things that you need to look for in an election climate, in a politically charged climate, to ensure that if you're actually going to make a decision, you are making that decision with the best information, and you're not making that decision based on disinformation or a fake or a deep fake that, that really confuses the entire process.
Tell me something, Renee. Is it that, and I'm just being the devil's advocate here, is it that the genie has escaped the bottle and you can't stop the genie back in with legislation and with all sorts of rules and regulations to coerce ethical behavior? That ultimately that genie is has escaped, and I'm using the word escaped, but of course it's human ingenuity, and it is now in 5 years, 10 years, it's going to be leaps and bounds beyond what we are considering now. And human structures in terms of legislation and ethical behavior, which has always been difficult to legislate, um, is always going to be in a catch-up mode.
Most definitely. The law never moves as fast as the technology. We all know that. It creates an extraordinary amount of loopholes, and we're seeing that right now. Hence the reason to sort of, hit the gas when it comes to bringing ethical frameworks, to bringing these ethical protocols into the realm of information and, of course, disinformation. We're seeing some of those challenges. We're seeing those challenges because when it comes to the ethics of the technology, we are realizing that AI changes so quickly. So while we were deploying the ethical frameworks frameworks for just AI. Then we got generative AI, which would have been Chat GPT, large language models, and many other approaches to the technology that's emerging. And we don't know what's coming after Chat GPT. So emerging technologies have emerging capabilities, and emerging capabilities have emerging risks. And that's why it is so challenging at the moment. So what we are trying to do is to ensure our data scientists, and it's so funny that data scientists have now become the architects of our future because they understand on data. And what we're seeing is that the most that we can ask for is our data scientists and our computer scientists and our statisticians and our technologists and anyone working in the space of technology to bring an ethical approach to understand things like accountability and, of course, transparency in the use of data, and things like public oversight, and, of course, stakeholder engagement. If you're building any tool that's going to be deployed on any community or any customer, or understanding the context. It's one thing to be technical in a lab, but when it hits real time, real space, and real people, the context impacts the technology. So these are just a lot of conversations that are happening, a lot of frameworks that are being deployed, countries that are moving very, very swiftly. You find the top countries in the world have already come together to come up with kinds of protocols that need to be in place. The UN, UNESCO, OECD, every big international agency, every big country. African nations have come together and they are going to deploy a continental African AI strategy. So it's really, really important that Caribbean countries and Caribbean nations get into this AI and data game in real time, because we are totally lagging behind when it comes to not only digital transformation, but technology. So a quick example would be Singapore, where Singapore has decided in real time to upskill everyone in that country with the skills required to become savvy and sophisticated users of AI. AI is about your workforce. AI is about your development. AI is about your systems. AI is about advancing your society. We know there are risks. I mean, the rewards are extraordinary, and you've got to prepare your society for the rewards. So we've got to also ask ourselves, while we're preparing for the risk, what about Trinidad and Tobago? What is a Trinidad and Tobago citizen going to look like in 5 years, and in 10 years, and in 15 years? And are we going to be competitive internationally with the skills that we have to bring into the future?
I was saying the bots came and stopped you because you're educating people too much.
That's funny.
The algorithm came. So just before you thanks for coming back, we were talking about the influence of information through these algorithms and what's being directed at you for commercial purposes, right? Because they call your information. Then, as you said, they know what you're watching, how long you're watching it, what you're switching to, what you're buying, what you look at on Instagram, what you click on, how much times you like this. And so the issue of the conversation about whether your will is free at a point or not, based on your bombardment with information and misinformation, is a conversation we need to have.
Most definitely. And it really comes back to if your will is ever going to be free again. And that's the major challenge. What we have to think about most significantly. Are you still hearing me and still seeing me?
Loud and clear now, better than ever now.
Fantastic. What you need to think, I mean, what we need to think about, and we have to have these conversations, is this thing about information. And what we're realizing is all the good information seems to be firewalled, and all the information that's just wrapped in disinformation seems to be the one that we continue to get for free. And this is the thing about data. There's something called data equity. And data equity is what kind of data out there, who is getting the right kind of data to make the right kind of information, and who's getting the data that really is all wrapped again in disinformation. It is so very important. Now, as I say, the good thing about algorithms and AI, and particularly generative AI, is how it could make representatives more accountable, because you find that the general public now has access to information. You can fact check, you can bring points to people, stakeholders can, and civil society can be very powerful if they have the right kind of data. The other challenge would be those chatbots and, of course, the weaponization of data in an election. And that is the concern, how data could be weaponized in disinformation strategies, how deep fakes and cloned voices can really create chaos when it comes to voting. Also, disinformation in the last two US elections, different communities were sent wrong dates and wrong polling station information, and they was told that certain things were happening in your community, and this polling station was closed. And of course, other people didn't have access to it because it was just sent to a particular group, particular community at a particular time. And of course, those are the things we need to watch. And it's just a big conversation that needs to be had now. There's no way anyone can really stop those bad actors or those bots from working. But you need to give people the information so they have the critical thinking and the kind of literacy that's required, that if something feels strange to them, or they, something, just feels disconcerting, they could understand what's at play. And it's very important. So at the moment, with the Brookings, the AI Equity Lab at Brookings, looking at data and democracy and disinformation, very, very critical. And what we're trying to do is we're deploying a strategy like the 1960s Freedom Riders, who went into communities and really educated people about voting and how to vote. Remember, for many Black and brown communities in the US who got the right to vote did not naturally translate into voting. There were other societal and structural and community practices that were being put in place to stop them from voting. So you had our Freedom Riders led by, of course, our own Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, who went into those communities and had to sometimes walk people to the polling stations or ensure that people got access to those spaces. So AI is creating a very similar situation where all constituencies, all constituents, all groups need to come together and say, what is happening with this technology? What's the state of play of this technology in the US? Are different parties going to use it? And what are the ethics? Just like we have the ethics when it comes to public debate, so conversations at the time of elections, definitely you need an ethical framework that looks at voting and, of course, information that's going to be shared.
I attended a conference in Oxford, years ago. This is about 4 or 5 years ago, which focused on misinformation, data, and its impact on elections around the world. And at that time, it identified 3 elections that were significantly swayed by the impact of digital platforms and information being targeted at the Brazilian election, the Barbados election, and one in Europe, where those countries, they understood, the players, that is, understood the power of the internet. This is 5 years ago. One of the things you mentioned that was very interesting to me, that I also kind of practice, is the issue of people feeling that things like Alexa are benign, and that your phone is not listening to keywords and gathering data from you, because by the phone off, I don't have the phone on, and I'm not talking to nobody, or I'm not engaging Alexa right now, that she and he are not listening all the time and gathering information on you.
Yeah, I think the world woke up to the fact that Alexa is always on. I think when that murder happened, and I think it was in Connecticut, and the police subpoenaed Alexa in the investigation. And of course, the owners, the company that owns Alexa, had to provide all the audio that was stored in the cloud. People realized at that moment, wait a minute, Alexa is always on. It's always on for the company. It's not always on for us. So everything you do in your house is being recorded by Alexa. That audio is there. So the police was able to get that audio. They were able to listen to everything up until the murder happened and after. And that
3 o'clock in the morning when you're sleeping, when you're snoring,
all of
when you're
that.
having intimate interactions, it's listening.
All of that, Alexis. But the thing is that we don't have access to that, but it's being stored in the cloud. And people always say to you that, they were speaking to someone about, let's say, buying a Mercedes Benz, and then the next day they go on to, or the next second they go on to social media, and you're seeing ads for Benz on Instagram, ads for Benz on Facebook. You're seeing everything that is all Mercedes being directed. That's again voice recognition. That's part of the makeup of your phone. And it's just that you know that we have got to understand how powerful this technology is. And while it can be used to really advance, and we're seeing it, when you see the kind of work AI is doing and data is doing, that same cancer research, it's mind blowing. That now you have algorithms that could really, I mean, the human eye is only that good, and you can have an algorithm that could survey millions of reports, x-rays, and really start to predict that someone has the proclivity or propensity to cancer 15 years before. I mean, that's mind blowing. So that's some of the good things. I mean, there's so many good things, but the challenge is information, information equity, decision making equity, autonomy, agency, free will, self determination, self identity. Those are the ones that are being impacted. And of course, the countries with the most money are going to be advancing significantly. When you
One,
think about what's going on with AI in sport, also another space where we're seeing brilliant things when it comes to those replays and referee decisions. And of course, you're seeing what some countries are doing with data to make their sport, their athletes, so much more sophisticated in real time that some countries may just not be able to compete. Is raw talent enough?
we have 9 minutes left, and one of the intersections that your brilliant mind has been able to leverage is your expertise in criminal justice and how we should be using these tools in the fight against crime. I know you. I know, but we need to share some new ideas.
You know what? There's so much happening out there, but I think our leaders in particular need to be open to those experiences and the understanding of how the world is changing. Crime fighting is now data driven. And if you are collecting significant data when it comes to the kinds of crimes that are being commissioned, you need to have among you skilled minds that are able to take that data, disaggregate that data, use that data now to build not only investigative and operational strategies, but even to build community engagement strategies, communication strategies. That's how we're fighting crime. We're not going into communities to brutalize people. We're not speaking aggressively to people. You're not going into, to spaces with the kind of I don't know what it is, but I think we need to bring just a more intelligent, and I don't know what is stopping us from understanding that what we are doing is really not benefiting us in any way. When for the last 2 decades, your clearance rate when it comes to crime, your solvency rate, it's less than 20% for almost 20 years. Somewhere it means that somebody's not been paying attention to the data, and we have got to get serious. This is something that breaks my heart. It really is a broken heart that I have when it comes to crime in Trinidad and Tobago, and the kind of crime we're seeing, and the high homicide rate, and just the lack of ideas in the space. And it's tough. This is a tough one for me.
I'm just wondering, because you're talking about leveraging on a certain level AI and the advantages of it in collating data and probably being utilized by governments. And let's talk about governments in the Caribbean, because all Caribbean countries generally have a problem with violent crime to some degree, to varying degrees. And leveraging that with regard to how you analyze data and how you come up with systems to deal with the crime issue. But devil's advocate again, governments are very easy to overreach in terms of monitoring citizens. It's very easy. And they will put it under the sobriquet of the better good of all. And if you don't have the legislative backup, or the constitutional protections, it's very easy for governments to purchase the skill and infrastructure to monitor citizens even more heavily from an AI perspective as to what they are doing, and leveraging that in a penalizing way. That's where societies can possibly go because government's pockets are very deep. So how do you see that within the framework of how government and the ethical behavior of governments within the constitutional protection platforms that will exist in terms of the rights of citizens against the power of the state?
Excellent. And those are questions around privacy and, of course, the right to be forgotten, which is a right that every citizen needs to have. Again, these are conversations on data privacy, data protection, safety and security when it comes to data, and what is allowed democratically in a society. You cannot monitor citizens. People need freedom of expression, freedom of movement, freedom to assemble, freedom to build their identities in whichever way they choose to build that. And no government has the right to monitor that. It's something significantly different if you're trying to monitor the behavior of persons involved in criminal activities. And even that requires you to get the legislative the legislative green light before you even deploy that kind of technology to monitor individuals who may be suspected of a particular kind of a nefarious behavior. So there must be protocols in place, there must be laws in place, there must be legislation in place, and you must actually have to go to some sort of course, the courts to get that kind of leverage. And of course, the courts don't just give it to you; it has to be decided in a particular way. That's one aspect of it. But when it comes to crime and criminality in Trinidad and Tobago, have we been leveraging technology in a way that could actually solve crime and enhance communities and build better relationships
And that
between
puts us
communities?
ahead of the curve. And that's not
Exactly.
constantly trying to catch up.
Exactly. And just, I mean, the strategies that we have, it is very, very obvious to see the things that we are doing at the moment in policing in particular are not intelligence driven, are not data driven, are just not bringing the requisite level of understanding and critical thinking when it comes to understanding crime and criminality. Our law enforcement leaders are just not giving us
You know what's sad?
the energy, the intellectual energy.
You and I have sat next to each other on morning shows hosting. Is it over 10 years ago now?
More than.
And having these same conversations about the approach to crime fighting. As a matter of fact, when you start to talk, you're described as an armchair criminologist, and it goes down that road, as opposed to embracing new ideas as your expertise has been embraced in other jurisdictions. Why do you think we have that approach in Trinidad and Tobago, that anybody with a different idea is just not seemingly embraced in the way that I think they should? It's like a protectionist environment.
Yeah, I think it's really because sometimes the lack of knowledge of the other individuals. You know, I will say I was so committed to really putting everything that I had, you know, emotionally and intellectually into coming up with strategies to reduce crime and criminality. And of course, for me, it is always building community resilience, and it's always young people, juveniles. You know, I always say that young people need a door open for them. They need opportunities. There are so many people in this world who are successful, who have become international mentors to so many others and began their lives as juvenile delinquents, or began their lives exposed to a particular behavior that was not healthy, but because of those requisite interventions and persons coming into their lives were able to change that trajectory. I think in Trinidad and Tobago, our approach to crime is not developing. It is not developing at the speed of the technology or the speed of new ideas. We seem to be doing the same thing over and over. I also think the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency continues to allow these very archaic approaches to continue. And of course, all the noise that oftentimes surrounds these institutions. But human lives are at stake. The development of our country is at stake. When you think about the families impacted by crime, or individuals who've had no closure because someone has been murdered and there's been no sort of, the case has not been closed. Those are things, that really hurt people in ways that become intergenerational. And intergenerational pain and intergenerational trauma and the lack of closure continue to create more and more and more crime. And we're not just seeing that. I just think that the people who have been charged with leading in this space don't have the requisite knowledge, and they're not willing to embrace the kinds of ideas that could really bring solutions.
I remember before we worked together, the passion you had for this, and there was a march you organized. Is it for Akil Chambers?
It was, yes.
And I remember participating in that march and seeing you in tears around the Queen's Park 7 and literally distraught because of how you felt about that, what happened to that young man, that boy, and how and the abysmal approach to solving his crime, and literally, so I remember hugging you and telling you it will be solved, and it was a false promise.
Yes, and those are the things that continue to really, that really makes society lose confidence. So much of reducing crime and building community resilience is built on public confidence and public trust, and public confidence and public trust combined give legitimacy to the work of the police and give integrity to the work of the police. I think at this stage, we really need to rethink what we're looking for at the level of law enforcement leadership. I think there needs to be a different kind of screening process to get us the leaders that we require. I think the leaders that we have are really not up to the task. And I think when we think of them, the approaches, it's sometimes, this is very tough for me. And as I said, I love my country so very much. All I ever wanted to do was to just bring some sort of, just bring these new ideas. And there's every society has crime. Every society has crime, but it's the strategies that you're deploying, is the fact that you're bringing a requisite kind of intellectual flexibility to these challenges. You're bringing that dynamism when it comes to creative thinking and creative problem solution. You're bringing that data analytics and predictive analytics into the space, and you're combining the best of the investigative mind and the best of data analytics to come up with solutions. And of course, for society, for our country to see that sort of dynamism in that space, and to see that to just make it look as though law enforcement actually care about what's happening to people, and to ensure that the criminal justice system is something that we uphold in a way that, as a country, we can be proud of our system, proud of our law enforcement. And it's just as though we don't want to move into, I don't know what's keeping us back.
Renee, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
I know this.
Thank you very much.
You're very, very in demand and busy, so we really, really appreciate you taking time to
Yeah.
us. And don't be a stranger again. I come into New York just now. We go find
Very good. I'm looking forward to that. Be safe, everyone. Take care. And of course, Steve, take care.
All the best to you, my dear.
Bye.
I took off my camera to save some bandwidth, just in case we have that issue. All the best. Take care.